Welcome back to Daybreak with Vivek, Sanal and myself, Murul Lisa. And it is that time of the day when we have our compliant expert in the studios.
Yes, stock compliance every Mondays and Fridays hota hai. This is brought to you by Tally Solutions. Now, experience the power of Tally Prime 3.0 today. Streamline your accounting processes, manage your voucher numbering, voucher series, and access insightful reports with ease. Say goodbye to stress and hello to efficiency. Tally Prime 3.0 ये नया अवतार है ऑफ सिंप्लिसिटी. विजिट कीजिए उनके वेबसाइट tallysolutions.com. That's tallysolutions.com. You can always call 800 Tally 800 82559 for a 14-day free trial.
Absolutely. And today we are joined by CA Girish Chand, Senior Partner, MCA Gulf. Now, he's been heading MCA Gulf compliance practice, covering corporate tax, VAT, ESR, AML, UBO across UAE, Bahrain, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. Now, conducted various compliance seminars on corporate tax, VAT, and ESR for large companies, professional bodies, industry groups, and authorities. Now, regular contributor to the UAE's newspaper on tax topics. Over 6 years of consulting experience, that's what he comes with. Over 25 years of experience in finance and audit executive roles. 10 years and counting finance leadership roles in CFO, Enoch Retail in the downstream oil and gas business. That is Enoch and EPCO, covering marketing, retail and trading. Well versed in board level dealings, JV structures and advisory role for executive management. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to come to talk 100.3. In fact, now I need to update my profile.
Yeah, regular speaker
Regular at Talk.
Talk 100.3 because newspaper में तो आते रहता है, but yeah, this is the third time you're in our studios now.
That's right. So
And it's a pleasure to always have you in our studios and to learn so much about corporate tax and about compliance and so many things. तो आज किस topic पे हम बात कर रहे हैं? It's called e-invoicing.
Yes.
What is e-invoicing, sir?
So you just have to answer the E in the invoicing, which is electronic invoicing as such.
Okay.
Right. Primarily, it's a format in which the invoices are not sent manually. Okay, they are created basically on the electronic platform. They are delivered on the electronic platform and then received, and also they are archived as such. So that is what is the e-invoicing per
So
se.
paperwork is basically taken off. It's now paperless transaction is what we can say.
That's right. So this has been in existence in various forms. So in fact, it started from the 1960s where EDI, electronic data interchange kind of formats were there as such earlier. Right now, organizations are looking at automation. Okay, so when we talk e-invoicing, there is two elements of it. One is which organizations introduce, right? In that part of it, it is largely dependent on the ecosphere being on the same system, right? Because if you send a certain format of invoices, the other organization should be able to process it per se. Right. The other form and which we are talking today is primarily where it is a government mandated e-invoicing. Okay. So where the government is introducing the invoicing primarily from a VAT perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
So जहाँ पे you need to mention your TRN numbers, there are certain elements which need to be mandatory. This is the government's indication, is it?
Yeah. So when they are implementing this sort of e-invoicing, so of course the supplier related informations are something which are captured in the invoice. Okay, and there are various phases of this which we can talk about.
Right.
In the
So
subsequent
different
slides.
industries can have different formats of invoices, or the government has come up with one format only.
So whenever it is mandated by the government, then
One
it is
format.
it is a standardized format.
Okay.
Right.
And that is where possibly organizations can use that benefit because then the formats are standardized.
Right.
Otherwise, if you take organizations, some of them have got Tally, some have got SAP, some have got Oracle.
Okay.
Right.
So they have different formats of the invoices. Okay, so that tends to be today when we talk about basically the organization based invoicing. Right. So what you'll find is that generally large organizations will want, they create something called, can I go through the process?
Please, please, it will be very interesting for us to know. Yeah.
Yeah, so what they tend to do is that, right from the purchase requisition stage, okay, so that is something they put on the system, okay, they generate a purchase order and then they give all their suppliers access to the portal.
Okay.
Okay, on the portal, the supplier is able to see the purchase order,
Okay.
right? Subsequently, he is able to push the invoice through the system, okay, and then that invoice is automatically processed because it's through the system with all the required information is available.
Okay.
So that's how it gets processed, okay. So the GRN or the acceptance of the invoice happens, and subsequently the organization will make the payment. So a lot of automation can be done in this process as such.
Right, and how is the government getting an advantage of it in comparison to what it was before? Because everything was on paper back then.
Yeah. So when you talk about the government kind of advantages, one is it's a real time, right? Because what happens in that system, maybe I'll talk a little about how the e-invoicing works in context of a government part of it. Right. So what will happen is that organizations in their ERP system, they will generate the invoices, okay. Subsequently they are expected to take to basically convert it into an e-invoice, okay. This would possibly take the form of, nowadays it takes the form of XML or a PDF A3 with an embedded XML. These are technical terms which possibly I also do not understand that much, right? But these are the IT, I think the IT guys will be able to talk much about it.
Okay.
But these are the format which is a standardized format. Now, generally, like if you look at Saudi Arabia, in the first phase, it was just that people had to generate the invoice in that format and send to the customer. Okay, but when we talk about the second phase, which they call the integration phase, okay, so in that phase, what was required is that particular invoice, before you send to your customer, it had to go on to the government portal. Again, there is a standardized
for approval. Yeah.
Yes. So what is called as the validation process. So it would get validated and then it would have a digital stamp effectively. So that basically says that this is kind of endorsed by the portal, by the the authority portal, and then you basically send it to the customer.
Okay.
Okay. Now there is a purpose behind all this. Okay, what it is that today if you look at the VAT returns, right, what people tend to do is they will generate the so-called manual kind of a tax invoice and send to the customer. Now when it comes to the government, you are reporting in your VAT return and maybe in summary form and stuff. So the details of the invoice are not available. It's only available in a summary form.
Right.
But by this methodology, the government will be able to see all the transactions, and tomorrow if the customer is the customer is asking for a refund, it is able to check in its system that yes, such an invoice was already kind of entered, and so the refund processing will be much faster.
And this is what we heard also, that a lot of tourists, when they come for refunds, the supply, for example, the retail shops have been doing this online e-invoicing, if I'm not wrong, and everything happens online so that you don't need to,
so
manually do it.
Correct.
Is that the one of the purpose?
Yeah, so like that is also facilitating this refund process. So again, what happens is that in that process, the invoices are generated and then they are pushed on the platform. Okay. So when the tourist goes into the the airport and
correct,
with
to
the
get the
authorities,
refund, yes,
to the refund. So that is currently done by a third party provider called, I think, Planet as such.
Okay.
Right.
So they tend to do
So
that.
there's a lot of transparency is what you're saying, because the government will have more control on this.
Absolutely. So there is transparency. One of the major elements is that in terms of the VAT evasions. Okay, there have been cases where people generate kind of these invoices, or they take an input tax credit. Okay, they generate an invoice, collect it, that is not remitted as such to the government. Okay, so those kind of tax evasions can be avoided. Again, like you rightly mentioned in the start, we are moving to a paperless kind of economy.
Correct.
So obviously it is more environmentally friendly also.
Right. Yeah.
Right, in terms of having this kind of a system in place,
Absolutely.
actually.
We will talk about this more. अगर आपके पास कोई भी सवाल about e-invoicing. हमारे साथ सीए गिरीश चंद है. 0586861003. This is Talk Compliance brought to you by Tally Solutions.
Talk 100.3.
Daybreak आप सुन रहे हैं. And every Mondays and Fridays Talk Compliance with Tally Solutions. And compliance के बारे में आज e-invoicing के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं. But quickly आपको याद दिलाए कि introducing Tally Prime 3.0, the new avatar of simplicity. Say hello to the new era of simple business management with Tally Prime 3.0. Phone कीजिए 800 Tally, which is 800-82559, and upgrade to the latest version of Tally Prime today. With its advanced features, Tally Prime 3.0 will ensure managing your business will be easier than ever. The all-new reports filter, voucher numbering, and the ease with which you can save your favorite reports for future viewing voucher series have brought in a new era of simple business management. To know more about this, tallysolutions.com पे भी log on कर सकते हैं.
Absolutely. We are in conversation with CA Girish Chand and we're talking to him about e-invoicing. Right now, sir, I want to ask you, what is the landscape of e-invoicing in the GCC nations, the GCC country, for example, and why has this changed over the past few years?
Yeah. So when you look at the landscape of e-invoicing, primarily KSA has been in the upfront. Okay, so in KSA, the e-invoicing has been kind of applicable from 1st of Jan 2022. Okay, so the first phase is where they spoke about the generation phase. What it meant is that all organizations are required to generate an e-invoice. Okay, which is compliant with the what the Saudi authorities had basically given. Okay, so they had to generate e-invoices. So that in that phase, what was required is that at a B2B level, people have to generate e-invoices and share e-invoices. When you talk of the B2C level, right, there was an expectation that there should be a QR code on the invoice. So, for example, if you go to an retail establishment in Saudi, and they would generate a tax
code.
invoice, but it would be in the e-invoice formats and a QR code, right? Now that particular QR code, if you have the reader, and this is a reader which is generally given by the tax authority. So if you have the reader, then you are able to see the details
of the
transaction on that invoice as such. Okay, so funnily enough, there have been various developments as such, and people have been generating QR codes. But when the Zatka readers came, those QR codes were
something else.
They were not giving the information.
Result,
the information as such. So, so that has been the phase as far as Jan 22. Now, what they did is from 1st of Jan 2023, they launched the integration phase. Okay, so here now it is a three-way communication. Earlier, it was just between the supplier and the customer. Now, whenever you generate a e-invoice, this would basically go into the Zatka portal.
Government portal.
Yeah, government portal, right? And this would get validated.
Right.
Okay, and this validation happens
immediately.
Immediately. It is not a
manual process.
No.
Okay, automated.
So it happens and it comes back, and then that is what you are expected to share with the customer.
Right.
So that is like it is actually endorsed before it is being shared.
Okay, so authenticity रह गई उसकी.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So that is a phase. Of course, they have been doing this in what is called as waves. Okay. So currently we are in possibly the second wave, where we are initially they started with entities which have turnover in excess of 3 billion reals.
Billion or million?
Billion. They started with the large entities as such.
Okay.
Right now they are talking about entities which are having about 500 million. Okay, and this is going to go down, and possibly we'll see in Jan entities which are having turnover in excess of 70 million.
Okay.
Right. So that is as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned on the e-invoicing. Now, basically, UAE has also announced, and it's very recent. So, as one of the Ministry of Finance has announced as part of its transformational project.
Okay.
So they are expecting that e-invoicing would be introduced in UAE in July 2025.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's a lot of time though.
Yeah, it requires that time also, for basically the because it's a system-driven activity.
Correct.
So it requires that much time. When we talk about Bahrain did in kind of a survey, okay, to assess the readiness as such, and Oman is also looking at it. So I would expect possibly in a 2 to 3 year time frame, you would have the e-invoicing in place in the GCC.
For example, all the retail establishments, now to get a simple understanding, will have to have some software, some system integrated in their shops, in their establishment. Is that what we're talking about?
Correct. So what it will require is, like when you take the Saudi example, right? At the first stage, what would happen is they are currently generating a tax invoice. Okay. Now, what would be expected is that they would need to generate a tax invoice which is compliant with the requirement. What it means is that the certain information about the invoice there needs to be basically kept in an XML format. Okay. So now, and the requirement now is for these large entities, when you talk about it in the retail context, they are expected to, at the retail one, you don't have this connectivity element. Okay. So you can issue it. But what they are expected is
For
within
large.
24 hours, all those kind of the retail related invoices should be kind of, sent to the Zatka portal.
And how are companies going to benefit from this, or how are
good
we as
question.
consumers going to benefit from it?
So if you take the consumers, obviously one of the elements is ensuring that you're paying something extra,
Correct.
right? Now, when this kind of a solution is there, what it means is that extra that they collected from the customer needs to go to the
Government.
right? For example, if it's a 100 dirham purchase, right?
5
5 is the
dirhams.
VAT.
Yeah, 5 dirhams is
They
VAT.
have collected 105. Now, this increases the assurance that 5 dirham will necessarily go to
Go
the
to
government.
the government because it is coming from
Correct.
the
So,
system.
for the customer. So that is as far as the consumers are concerned.
Okay.
When you talk about businesses per se, I think the same benefits are there. Obviously, initially there is a cost element because today you have an ERP system and it is generating invoicing and all. What you need to do is to make that invoicing into the formats that is expected by the government. So that is the
Challenge.
additional element of challenge. But if people are able to take this to the next level, like I said, if you were to do an automation today, right, you need all of your ecosystem to be on the same platform, right? But when we talk about something like this, it is creating a standardized format, right? Now organizations could use that, right? For example, if you're getting this embedded XML3, now you could use that kind of an information, and somebody doesn't have to enter the invoice again manually, right? They could use that, they could automate their AP processes. So in that sense, that is the benefit. So in terms of obviously the time factor, right? The cost savings, because obviously when you talk about the entry, the errors that generally happen in this kind of entry system, so that is taken out. You're helping the environment also, right?
Correct.
Because you're moving to a more, and especially when you talk about digitization today, so this is one form of it.
Right.
Yeah. So I think in a way, when you have such a mandated at the government level, the organizations could take advantage of it and improve their own, digitization process per se.
Plus, you will not be also, under the scrutiny of the government that, you're in case of any malpractice happening or not. If it is streamlined with the government.
Yeah.
So that way you are also assured that, you are not indulging in any kind of malpractice.
Correct. And what this means is that you cannot indulge also. Right. Because
I knew Gar was coming somewhere.
still remember Gar.
Little bit, yeah.
Especially Gar Cedar, yeah.
No, but interesting, sir. We will continue this conversation a little bit longer. When we come back, I want to know from you, what is the rule in place for tax invoicing? Is there any particular rule that you need to fulfill so that you can have the tax invoice implemented in your organization? Is there something like that the UAE has come up with? We'll talk about this, but after the break.
Talk 100.3.
Welcome back to Daybreak with Vivek Sanal and myself, Muriel Disa, and this hour is known as Talk Compliance in association with Tally Solutions. We are in conversation with CA Girish Chand and we're talking to him about e-invoicing. Before we could go on a break, I asked him a question about e-invoicing. Are there any rules or regulations that companies must abide with before getting onto the e-invoicing systems?
Sure. So largely, when you talk about the e-invoicing as such, right, like I mentioned, there is a standardized format in which you are expected to generate the invoice. Okay, so either it will be an XML or a PDF A3 with embedded Excel, right? And these formats are generally specified by the respective
Authorities.
tax authorities, right? So you would be expected to generate in that format, and when you are sending it to the portal, right, that format should be maintained. Now, if like in the retail environment, B2C environment, okay, if you are generating this, then there is a QR code requirement, okay, and the QR code would contain basic information about the seller, the TRN, the VAT amount, okay, and certain elements of basically the security which are required in an e-invoice scenario. So those are basically the mandated kind of information that you would be having. Okay, now the government rules also requires, when you talk about the integration phase, okay, so effectively these the system from where you're generating that particular, for example, you use your computer to generate those invoices. Now those have to be authenticated and authorized. So it will be from that system whenever you're sending, so that needs to be authorized by the government.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so depending upon if you're using 5 systems or servers to kind of communicate,
Okay.
all those authentication needs to be happening as such.
And 99% of the time it will be approved, right?
Yeah. So it is only a process of, that's a
Just
pre-authorization.
reporting, basically. It is kind of reporting, basically.
Yeah, it's a process of reporting, but it would be approved as long as the formats are maintained as such.
And what are the difficulties that people would be facing or industries would be facing?
Initially.
Yeah, so when we talk about this, obviously you're talking of a technology, right?
Okay. How savvy you are with it. Okay.
How savvy, and also what do you have? What is the system you're having?
Okay.
Okay, when you look at systems like Tally, and they already have this experience. Okay, right from India, where they have implemented. Now in Saudi also they implemented. Okay, gone on to the phase 2 on the integration, right, with the pack as such, right? So where the systems are ready, then it becomes an easier job. Okay, where the systems are not ready, then that becomes a development. Okay, you can also see that sometimes some of these systems are not ready, then you need to have an external kind of a development. Okay, so which will become more cumbersome. Again, that you do there, again, how does it integrate back into your whatever systems you're maintaining?
Lost in transit kind of issues. Yeah.
So primarily there is a lot of development part of it, and then again the people have to be trained in terms of how to use the systems. Okay, so these are the challenges that you might face when you are implementing.
Right. But how do tax authorities introduce and why do they do it? In fact, we spoke about this, right?
Yeah, so largely when we are talking about the tax authorities, like I mentioned, you get a real-time data. Okay, the tax compliance improves because the accuracy is there. Basically because it is already in a set format.
Right.
You do not have evasions, right? Now, if they were to, if you look at it from an audit perspective, right, it gets easier because there is a trail. It is not a case.
Correct.
Today what happens is that you are only submitting 10 standardized summary information. Now when they ask,
The
there is
invoice.
still, as the invoice, you can still do
Correct.
some changes to it.
Correct.
Right, but once this system is introduced, because they are all date stamped, they're all recorded in the system.
And government authorized as well.
Yeah, so it's already kind of, so in that sense there's much easier. More importantly, now when they get this real-time data, it helps them in their tax policy planning also, because now you're getting trends, because like a summarized information, if you get detailed information on a daily basis, right, so you get much more information, and it helps in terms of how they plan out in terms of their tax policies as such. Yeah, and the benefits of when you talk of a paperless economy,
Right.
cost savings, faster processing,
Correct.
environmentally friendly. So these are all benefits that the tax authorities will have.
Right. And e-invoicing is valid for any industry, any service, anything, right? As long as
Yeah. So right, they tend to do in phases like they are doing in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so that is across industries. Just happens to be that if your turnover threshold meets what they specified, for example, 3 billion or half a billion. Okay, today possibly I think we are at half a billion, and by the year end we'll reach to about 150 million.
You know what we've noticed a couple of times, whenever you go to certain places, जब भी आप for example मोबाइल फोन लेते हो या कुछ लेते हो,
Right.
तो वो बोलते हैं कि with बिल चाहिए तो इतना लगेगा, without बिल चाहिए तो. We know of course there are some tax evasions happening over there.
Correct.
E-invoicing will definitely remove this part. You
Yes,
would suggest?
yes, it would increase the compliance, because obviously now you would be expected to generate an invoice, right, which has basically got some embedded QR codes also.
So every good that you have possess in your establishment, it will be linked with the government system?
No, inventories are not yet
Inventories will
inventories
not
are not
be.
yet linked as such.
Okay.
It just happens to be the invoicing part of it as such.
Okay.
And any industries that will not fall under this bracket, or is this applicable to even a small timer?
So the small timer part of it is like they would be basically doing it in phases. They have been doing gradually. So like when you look at Saudi, they're still talking about possibly a 70 million turnover, right? So it's still, we are talking about medium scale enterprises.
Okay.
But it would be expected that at some point of time it will be rolled down to everybody. But if you take today, even if you talk of a small SME sector,
Okay.
like the accounting softwares like Tally and all, they already have the capability of generating the e-invoices. as
Just that
such.
it has to be in the same format as the government when the mandate comes in.
So that is taken care of by the the technology like Tallies and all.
Oh, fantastic.
So they take care of it.
Superb.
Okay.
आपका काम आसान हो गया.
Yeah. So only what you need to do is that possibly your software needs to be upgraded,
Okay.
right, to the latest version, because all those will be in the latest versions as such.
Superb. And that's what you need to do. Tally Prime 3.0, upgrade कीजिए to the latest version of Tally Prime today. Advanced features है Tally Prime 3.0, ensure करेगा that you manage your business will it'll be much easier for you to manage. All new reports, filter, voucher numbering, and the ease with which you can save your favorite reports for future viewing, voucher series. They have brought in a new era of simple business management. Tallysolutions.com या फोन कीजिए 800 Tally. आपके पास कोई भी सवाल for CA गिरीश चंद हमारे साथ है इस वक्त स्टूडियो में. We're talking to him. 0586861003 हमारा WhatsApp number.
Talk 100.3.
Welcome back to Daybreak with Vivek, Sanal and myself, Meerul Disa. Still in conversation with CA Girish Chand. And yes, this is Talk Compliance in association with Tally Solutions. We're talking about all things e-invoicing. Before we could go on a break, sir, we were speaking about what are the challenges of e-invoicing, and if you could elaborate a bit on this.
Yeah, so as far as e-invoicing is concerned, one is the adoption barrier. Like we said, it's about the technology. So generally, when you talk about the small and medium establishments, some of them struggle because they don't have the adequate systems as such. Yeah, so in that sense, they would basically have limited technological resources as such. Okay. Also, one of the challenge which has led like if you look at e-invoicing, whether at a organization level or at a government level, right, for not to develop so much has been everyone use their own standards in terms of how the data has to be embedded.
Okay.
Right, so that kind of becomes a challenge. So when you take it possibly across countries, each one will have their own standards of how the embedment of data should happen. So again, the talking between those systems might tend to get little more troublesome.
Correct.
Yeah, so that might be an issue. Then obviously, because we are doing the things on the on electronically, then the data security and privacy, those concerns
Comes
emerge,
into account.
Right.
Yeah.
right, which are with any when you talk of the internet or you talk about anything digital, right.
So all these
are
developed countries have come up with this concept of e-invoicing?
So right now, yes, if you look at it, basically it's again a different, not everybody is implemented. Okay, Norway was one of the first country in about 2001 that they implemented, and today we are talking about close to 80 plus countries are implemented it. It's largely about the countries which are focused to kind of improve their tax collectability.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
Because there was one survey by, I think, if I remember correctly, Harvard Kennedy School,
Okay.
right? Apparently in Mexico, when they did this, okay, their GDP went up by about 12 to 16%, and effectively the collection improvement on the VAT front, that increased by about 48%.
Wow.
Right.
Okay, so generally, I think
So there's efficiency in the transaction that you do. There is efficiency involved in it, right?
yes, yes, it definitely it is efficient. The initial phase may be little, long drawn, right? And maybe the implementation could take about minimum of 2 to 3 years, because you can't get everybody on the platform, and so effectively for the when you talk about the VAT return to be generated automatically, what it would mean is that everybody need to have that, to be on the platform.
Same page.
Right.
I think once it is there, maybe there is no need for anybody to file a VAT return.
This is what I was coming to actually. There is no requirement then left for you to actually file those returns.
Yeah.
But
So
will the government then still force you to file the VAT returns?
no, I don't
or-
think so. That even from a government efficiency perspective,
Correct.
right? You don't have to have the thing saying that fine, on this date, like this date, you file the return.
Because
Right.
government has all the information, you have all the information.
Absolutely.
The customer also.
Yeah, so the VAT return generation would be easier. Maybe there will always be the element of something which has not gone through, and that might be the reason where they could ask you to file it. Okay, for the till again it is become efficient, and maybe that is a 5 to 10 year time frame.
Okay.
Okay, so that element might be there, but it brings about a lot of efficiency. So when you talk about refunds, maybe refunds could be processed automatically also,
Correct.
because
yeah.
you already have that information.
Right. So, but will the government standardize a format? Will
Yes.
they put one format into
Yeah,
place?
yeah. That is standard, because any government will put a standardized format, okay, and expect all the businesses to follow that format.
Right.
So that is what the way you can have, the kind of
Integration.
integrations.
सुपर
Right.
अगर आपके पास भी कोई सवाल ई इनवॉइसिंग को लेके सी गिरीश चंद हमारे साथ है 0586861003 इज अ व्हाट्सएप नंबर एंड टैली सॉल्यूशंस के बारे में आपको बताते हैं एक्सपीरियंस द पावर ऑफ टैली प्राइम 3.0 टुडे स्ट्रीमलाइन योर अकाउंटिंग प्रोसेस मैनेज योर वाउचर नंबरिंग वाउचर सीरीज एंड एक्सेस insightful reports with ease. Say goodbye to stress and hello to efficiency. TallySolutions.com पे लॉग ऑन कीजिए.
Talk 100.3.
On the break, I actually asked you a question on once you have gotten the e-invoicing system and you start putting in your data, filing in your data. Now, is there going to be some sort of an audit by the ministry or by the government to ensure that you are complying with it?
Yeah, so one is on the process, definitely, right? Whether you are kind of following all the requirements, okay, and basically also archiving the information required, right? Second is when you talk about the B2C or the retail based one, okay, so there definitely will be inspections to see that is your format basically in line, okay. Are there QR codes? And again, the QR codes, like I mentioned, they should be basically readable, right? So around those there will be audits. Now some of the traditional audits in terms of possibly looking at transaction level may get eliminated, since now that information flow happens.
Okay.
Okay, so but what would tend to happen is that more there will be the information is there, so there could be more analytical kind of basically reviews which are being done by the government.
Right. So now when it comes to authorities and the requirements that they require for normal, let's say, VAT invoicing, so that will be integrated to invoicing?
Yeah.
It'll
So-
be the same,
Correct,
similar.
correct. It just happens to be that today you are basically following the requirements for a tax invoice and generating a printed form.
Correct.
Okay, what you are doing is that now you are generating an electronic form of the invoice.
Okay.
That is what you are doing. Okay, so all the requirements remain the same.
Remain the same. Okay.
Yeah.
There won't be any additional things required.
No, except maybe things which are required for communicating with the systems.
Okay.
Right? So there are those basically authentication, the crypto keys. So those all comes in. Maybe those may be required additionally.
So
Right.
e-invoicing is mandatory in some countries and In UAE, it's not yet, you're saying.
No. In UAE, it is just been announced that a date,
2025.
a date has been set.
Okay.
Right. Now we have to see whether that date is in terms of the initial kind of introduction, right? Because if you go as per the KSA experience, okay, so the e-invoicing started in 1st of Jan 2022,
Okay.
right? And that just started with a generation phase of the invoice, right? Now we are in the integration phase. And again, the integration phase, they have kept it, based on turnover, and maybe that will go for another 2 years in terms of an integration phase. And then maybe we are looking at all businesses which are registered in the authority system, all of them to be on the e-invoicing platform.
There's a timeline of 4 to 5 years according to you?
Yeah, so for it to entire system to mature, I would imagine it would take that kind of time frame.
What happens if a company does not comply with it? What are the fines? What fines are we looking at?
So the fines are
You
depending
cannot
upon
generate
the
only, right? The invoice then?
No, you can generate. See, your invoices are generated on your ERP system. Okay, so you can always generate invoices. What it requires, just look at it this way, that when you press the print button, today you are saying print on your printer,
Right.
or you are saying print on your PDF format.
Right.
This is one more version where it is printing, on a PDF format with the embedded XMLs as such. Okay, so it is a form of, let's put it, it's a form of a report
Okay.
which is being generated. That's what we are referring to as the invoice.
Right. And companies will now have to make this mandatory. Now, we are also talking about Saudi Arabia, and we're talking about the progression in Saudi Arabia where e-invoicing is concerned and where staying compliant is concerned. What do you think will the UAE adapt from Saudi Arabia, and how do you think we can better one step ahead where our e-invoicing systems are concerned?
Good question. So I think we expect a similar kind of a phased manner implementation. Okay, so I would imagine that when you look at it today, basically I think one of the learnings from the KSA implementation was, right, where effectively people took it as phases, because there was a generation phase and there was an integration phase. Okay, so since it was in phases, people took the implementation in that manner of saying that fine, I'm okay now to just do the generation, I will bother about the integration later on. Okay, so what tend to happen was that sometimes you choose a cheaper solution. Okay, because it says just about the generation, like I mentioned, it's a form of report. Okay, so when you get multiple service providers, you'll choose somebody who's offering a cheaper solution on the generation. Right.
True.
Now what happens is that you could generate it, okay, but the technology is not built in a way that you can take care of the integration phase. Okay, so in that sense, that is something that I think it's a learning from the case experience, which people can look at, is that look at the entire development, so that choose the service provider accordingly.
Okay.
Where you can basically do the generation and also the subsequent
integration,
integration.
Right.
And it's a little technical in terms of that, because not all service providers will be able to do the integration, and we are seeing that in the KSA context.
Okay.
Where I think possibly in the initial phase there were over, I think more than, if I remember correctly, more than 150
Cases.
kind of developers who were authorized as far as Zatka, but when it comes to the integration phase, a lot of them could not basically
Execute it.
execute
Right.
the integration phase.
Right.
Okay, so this is something that maybe it is important that when you are doing especially in the UAE context,
Okay.
when you are looking at somebody to provide an e-invoicing solution, you should look at, because the integration is something which is going to come in, right, whenever a tax authority includes it, because otherwise it will not bring the benefits to the tax authority unless they get that the real time basically
Information.
the information and also the validation of the invoice.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
But so what happens to then digital receipts? If everything is going to be digitalized, how we are so accustomed to getting things in hand, what happens to that?
I think we are now seeing our world changing, right? Now we are seeing our world is in the mobile. Earlier
Correct.
possibly in the laptop, or possibly earlier they used to carry a book, and
Correct.
nowadays nobody carries a book.
Yeah.
So I think it is that phase that we are in. So when we talk about it, it's just a matter of us getting used to this
New system.
digital phase where you might not get in there. And today, you get your receipts on your mobile.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you go to a supermarket,
Yes,
They
they
give you
ask
an
you on
Really?
WhatsApp
Yeah,
or
yeah.
some.
I have never. So
What are
not
you
in a
saying?
supermarket, not in a
Yeah.
supermarket.
Yeah, they
Lulu
they
does
send
this.
it to you on WhatsApp or anywhere,
Lulu does it.
on email. Yeah,
I have never.
you don't
got
need
it.
to.
Yeah.
I've
yeah.
always got a physical.
There are some counters
receipt.
where you go there. And they started with some counters.
Yeah.
Now, after the loyalty programs were introduced,
Huh.
right? So you're already on their system. So now they just ask you a question: do you want a physical or a paper, in the receipt, or you're okay with then, and it will come to your basically on your as an SMS or on your app.
Where is this? Only in Dubai?
Yes.
I'm sure it happens around the
I'm just
world,
kidding,
many countries.
But I haven't experienced
Yeah.
this. So this one's a new one for me. So I'm going to keep an eye for this one.
But yeah, the sole purpose of this, let's quickly try to get a summary about e-invoicing. Now, the whole purpose is the government's collecting tax in an efficient way. That is one. The other is, will there be any benefit in terms of invoicing apne kar di, and then suppliers paying you on time, or the financial.
Yeah,
Will
very
that
good
angle?
question. Yes, I think definitely it is there. It can cut down the cycle times. Okay, so if it is across the nation, if the information is already in a standardized format, I think a lot of organizations can use that benefit and actually kind of use it to reduce their time of A, processing invoices, okay, B, paying. The paying part of it is still in the intent could be there,
Inverted commas.
yeah, because it all
The
depends on again
intention is there, yeah.
it all depends again on the cash flow. But I'm sure where organizations cash flow is not an issue, they would want to kind of process it faster, because what it does is also is that as far as the accounts payable team is concerned, they don't want to spend their time on answering supplier queries.
Correct.
Okay, so if there is a digitization which is happening,
Right.
there is no need for a supplier to call, because he knows when the GRN has been generated, he knows when the invoice has been processed, he will also know when the payment is going to happen.
Perfect.
Right, so it takes away a lot of the intermediate processes.
Correct.
Things like reconciliations.
Absolutely.
Between the organizations.
Correct.
Right, those and all will also be kind of substantially reduced when you have kind of the AP automation, what we refer to.
Okay.
Right, so that will definitely help organizations also. And I think, I believe that if the government is introducing it, it is up to the organizations to take the benefit from it and kind of improve their processes. And obviously this is all towards that, what we refer to as a digitization age.
Will there be a pilot phase of the e-invoicing, like testing the waters of sorts?
Yeah. So I think like the KSA we have seen, right, effectively there will be a pilot phase where organizations will be given time. In fact, even the integration phase, they have a 6 months time frame, okay, for you to actually test out and basically get compliant.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you so very much for taking time
Thank
out,
you.
coming to our studios and having this chat with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you so
always a
much.
pleasure,
Yeah.
right? And I should remember to add to my CV about this.
Perfect. We look forward to you because it is quite insightful whenever we have you in the studios. And see you soon again, sir.
Thank you so much.